Welcome to the December 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Winnetka Village Council. If we could all mute our cell phones and other electronic devices, that would be appreciated. And I will ask Manager Rob Ahan to do a roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Trustee Apatow? Here. Trustee Orsic? Here. Trustee Handler?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn?
Here.
Trustee Albinson?
Here.
Thank you, Rob. And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. I pledge allegiance. Okay, Rob, why don't we do a quorum check for upcoming meetings?
Thank you. The January 2nd regular council meeting is canceled, and based upon schedule availability, we shifted the meeting schedule out 1 week. So January 9th regular meeting, January 16th study session, and then a January 23rd regular meeting. Are there any conflicts with those dates?
I will not be here on the 16th.
16th, okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Now we move to item 4 for public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda, now is the time for you to come to the podium. Anyone for public comment on items not on the agenda? Katie?
I asked for an easel tonight, but I couldn't get one, so I've got an easel holder, Vanna. She's not here all down, because it's Christmas time, that doesn't count as my 3 minutes, but I had to get an easel holder. Hi, my name, can I move this? I can't see you all. Hi, thank you. My name's Katie Stevens. Thank you for meeting me at this Christmas holiday season. I have like 5 points I'd like to talk about the park plan that I'd like you to know about. I've given you all a packet tonight, and I'd like you to not look at the packet and look at this beautiful Vanna. I want you to know that I have only worked for public land for how many years? 40 years. And you all have the responsibility of the public health and safety. You've said that you only need to create what's minimally necessary. And from what I can tell from this plan, the rocks account for approximately 20% of our beach. So of 1,000 feet, from what I can tell, it's 3 times what we're receiving in a potential swap. I'd like to share with you tonight what my perception is of the difference between the original plan and where we are now. And the last point I have is there's a new donor offer for $3 million to the Park District that's unrestricted. It only qualifies 2 things, which I'll get into at the end. Remind me if I forget. We've represented the public for multiple years, and I want to share with you my thoughts on the plan. Now I'd like you to look at the first page of your packet, which I didn't have a blow-up of, and I didn't have time to get it. But if you look at the packet, we used to have just a wall on the northern end and the southern end. Okay, that was what the Park District put together as their first plan in 2019. This is how far we've come. And you talk about minimally necessary. So what we have here is a super wide wall with 2 36-inch pipes under. So this represents 12 to 16 feet at the end. So this doesn't say the width, but from what I can calculate, it looks about like 90 feet. And then there's rocks, as you know, it's like an iceberg. There's a lot under the water that you can't see. Then this is the pier. So this is the northern end with pipes that we don't even know if they're going to work with 2 36-inch pipes. We might need a 54-inch pipe still. So until we decide that, we can't build in the lake, in my opinion. This is the pier. This is the middle of the beach. This is the middle of the dog beach. And this is the Orchard 2020 wall. So we've gone from 2 walls to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In addition, what I'd like you to look at, and I've given you all a copy of this as well, is the access to the beach. So the goal of the Park District, they said, was to unite this beach into one beach. So the access to Mr. Edwardson's, who's here tonight, is not at the bluff line. The original plan had nothing at the bluff line, so you could walk the beach. It's right here in the middle. The pier you can walk over. This has public access, not again at the water line, but not at the bluff line. And then as you go to this beach, this is where I have a significant issue. And I've been studying this for literally 3 years. I learned something today. I don't know how much this bends. But this has a fence. On top of a pier, we have rocks. And on top of the rocks, we have a fence. And the fence, how am I, if I'm out here on the pier, going to go save someone in this water if I see a problem? And we've had 3 health and safety issues. 1 fatal this year, 2 terrible. And I will tell you, my kids jumped off this pier every day after graduation, the whole time they were at junior high and high school. So now we're going to have rocks underneath the water that no one can see, especially on a rough day. We have a fence that fences this in. But today I learned this fence not only goes here, but it goes all the way down, it goes all the way across, and it goes all the way up. So if I see someone in the water, how am I going to get over the fence and the rocks to save them? I have to go down here, across, and all the way back out. I mean, it's the most ludicrous plan I've ever seen, in my opinion, in my life. And then we have this rock wall that's extremely wide. This is the current pier. This is how wide these are. This is the one I want to show you. It's absolutely absurd. So if the swap were to go through 70 feet past here, there would be, how do I get over a fence here with access to walk the beach at the beach line? How do I walk the beach? The only access point I see is here. And then here, and this one is here. But there's a fence here. So, I know that the Park District is working on this, but my point is, you need to guarantee public access. You need to guarantee that I can safely protect everyone in all these different bodies of water. And you need to manage the stormwater project, which, honest to God, if this takes up 90 feet of beach, is more than the 70 feet we'd ever get. But it's not written exactly what it is. But remember, under the water, there's a lot more. My husband suffered at Lloyd Beach. His kayak tipped over, actually. And if you hit those rocks, you can't get out of them. Okay. So if you could look at the health and safety, the public access, and thank Vanna for her time, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kitty. Would anyone else from the audience like to provide public comment?
Let's see.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Good, okay. Good evening and happy holidays. Irene Smith. I've lived in Winnetka almost 40 years. I'd like to talk about the village's jurisdiction over the Lake Michigan beachfront. I understand that for zoning purposes, Lake Michigan is considered a public street. That says to me that the public may walk on the beach. We also have the doctrine of public trust, which assures us the right to walk at the waterline. That ease of access will be eliminated if the Winnetka Park District accepts a $3 million donation from the Ishbia Family Foundation, with many demands now attached to it. Mr. Ishbia's plan will make walking along the waterfront impossible. How did we get to this point? On August 30th, 2023, Park Commissioners Christina Cotto and Warren James asked Justin Ishbia for a $3 million donation to the Park District. I don't understand how a board in negotiations with a private individual could ask that same person to contribute money to that board, but that's a different story. On September 7th, 2023, Mr. Ishbia's attorney, David Williams, came to the Park Board meeting to announce the Ishbia donation. He said it was a no-strings-attached contribution. Actually, there were many strings attached, one of which will encumber the village of Winnetka for 50 years or longer. The latest version of the Ishbia agreement proposes project elements on the south side of Centennial Beach, which may not be changed for 50 years without the Ishbia's approval. Last Thursday, the Park District was thrown a life preserver. An anonymous donor has offered a $3 million donation with no strings attached concerning any of the building elements. This contribution would enable the Park District to walk away from the Ishbia donation for the exact same amount of money. They could simply say no to an overly burdensome, restricted donation agreement. Now, about your jurisdiction. You have worked in partnership with the parks on the East Winnetka Stormwater Project. You're also committed to the safety and security of the village. Through your reviews for special use permits, you have the ability to affect change. Although you have no jurisdiction over donations to another taxing body, I'm sure you can imagine how much simpler things could be if the Park District would walk away from Ishbia's demands. You are empowered to do the right thing. If you look at the drawings of the current Winnetka Park District Elder Centennial Project attached to Mr. Ishbia's agreement, you'll be amazed at the combination of rocks, fences, and dog beach enclosures, which will challenge anyone to dare walk along Lake Michigan Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Would anyone else like to speak tonight? Okay.
I'm John Edwardson, 301 Sheridan, and I've lived in Winnetka since '05. And I didn't dress up for you tonight. I left a dinner party to come here because I knew you would want to hear what I have to say. I'm not going to talk about the lake or the park. I'm just going to talk about steep slopes. I'm the northern border of Elder Lane Park, and tomorrow I will sign a letter in support of what the Park District wants to do and send it to the appropriate authorities in the state of Illinois and the Army Corps of Engineers. But that's not why I'm here. I wrote a letter to each of you, an email which was sent, and I didn't hear back from a single one of you, and I noted that it wasn't mentioned at the last board meeting, the last village trustees meeting. I'm not going to read it because I know you still have it. And the question is this. What we heard over the months and years is that you wanted to prevent another thing happening like what happened, I believe, at 251 Sheridan. I guess Justin's name is the name that cannot be mentioned in public, but in any event, there are not a lot of people happy about the size of the property or what is going on there, and I get a chance to view it every day. What I am frustrated about is the reaction that you have taken. We have a lot of creative people on this village council, and all you can think to do is to regulate every other lakefront owner with a steep slope regulation because you're unhappy about one homeowner and what they did. There's got to be a different way to handle it. We've never had a building or a boathouse or a deck, as far as I know, slide down the hill into the lake. Then it became Save the Natural Bluffs. When I built my boathouse, our bluff was full of chunks of concrete and asphalt that had been deposited there years ago when water levels were high and the bluff was eroding. And even your own staff and your own consultants have said to this body, there is no natural bluff in the village of Winnetka. So I still don't understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve. I don't think more regulation is the issue, and I do own 2 lots. I'm not complaining about the lot consolidation, but when I want to consolidate these lots, I hope the Planning Commission is as friendly as you have said in public that they will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Colleen? Good evening.
Colleen Root, 326 Winnetka. I have the privilege to represent this village as a Park District Commissioner. My comments tonight are my comments as a commissioner. They do not represent the intent or comments of the Park District Board. I want to thank Mr. Edwardson for signing his letter of support for the Elder Beach plan. Thank you. And I want to respond to his comment about steep slope, that, as you know better than I, every other North Shore community has a steep slope regulation. And so I encourage you to continue your diligent work on steep slope, but that's not why I'm here. The privatization of our public open lands is an increasing phenomenon in our Western culture. Whether it is fencing, our historic pathways to our national forests, our fishing streams, hunting grounds, or in the UK, my husband didn't want me to say this, but I've walked them. Now in the UK, they are fencing the access to ancient medieval pathways to see sacred streams and cathedrals. Again, he thought it was irrelevant, but I thought it was important. The village of Winnetka, unfortunately, is not immune to a private interest attempting to control access to what was once public open land. The Park District, as you've heard, is now entertaining a contribution agreement that carries with it an obligation to enter into a 50-year restrictive covenant, an encumbrance on Centennial Park, the entire park. And that's been paid for and maintained by the taxpayer. Should the Park District accept this donation, then it must covenant for a period of 50 years that it's going to do 3 things. 1, it's going to construct a huge stone breakwater, not on the perimeter, on the boundary of Centennial Park, but dab smack in the middle of that park. And it must keep that huge breakwater there and not change it. 2, it must agree that it will fence in a dog beach fence on the southern cove that's been created by this central breakwater. And it's even more egregious because this fence will not be on the sand on the fence's northern boundary. It's going to be dab smack up there on top of a stone breakwater. I don't know if you remember the steel louver fence that was the summer of 2022. Third element is this huge steel and concrete ADA pathway. And again, the Park District must covenant and agree that it won't change any of these elements for 50 years. You heard this evening that another contribution has been offered. We at the Park District just heard about it Thursday evening. We have no details but a letter that says we're giving this to you without any sort of restriction. You may ask why I am burdening you, the trustees of the Village of Winnetka, with Park District business. And the reason that I am is because you've recognized your jurisdiction to, you have jurisdiction on the lakefront. You have the ability to police health and safety. And so I am asking that you take a look at the design that is in the packet that Ms. Stevens gave you tonight, because I first found this design when it was given to me on Friday morning, and what it was the beach concept plan for Elder and Centennial as of 2019. And then I started doing some digging. And I went through the history of the Park District, and I found out that there were 2 workshops in March of 2019 when this was the plan and this was the concept. And if you look at it, you're going to see that there is ADA access to Centennial Beach down through a ramp walkway. You don't have to have steel and concrete all over the beach. There it is. You're not going to see any fences. There aren't any fences anywhere. And what I found so kind of incredible was look at those stone breakwaters. They don't go all the way to the toe of the bluff. There is space where people can walk. So I ask you, as you look at your regulations and look at plans that are what is minimally necessary to effectuate the project, that you go back and pull that out and look at that plan. I think it's a darn good plan. And I'm somewhat curious as to why we spent 3 years trying to change it. So on that note, I want to wish everybody, can I say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everything you do. It's a thankless task. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you. Oh.
Good evening, Mary Garrison. I live at 350 Ridge. Today, I was in communities 15 miles west of Winnetka, and on the drive back, I was ever so grateful, again, for our community. Nestled along Lake Michigan North Shore, Winnetka is a community of tree-lined streets, sandy beaches, renowned schools, outstanding parks, gorgeous terrain, and beautiful sunrises. Often called the founders of Winnetka were Charles and Sarah Peck. And Sarah Peck, God bless her, named Winnetka after the Native American phrase thought to mean beautiful land. She organized the village's first school, a private one, in 1856. The Park District was organized in 1903 or 04, and is the 4th park district to be part of the Illinois Association of Park Districts today, and that happened 119 years ago. Winnetka was originally self-sufficient, as you know. We had a water plant and a power plant and a trash plant. Winnetka was always on the cutting edge. We were and are leaders in so many ways. Our mission today is to stay on the cutting edge and keep Winnetka the village that stands out among others. People come to our community because our village is unique. The town has Lake Michigan, an abundance of open space, parks, beaches, all for the community's use. I thank you for all that you do to keep our community what it was, what it is, and what it will be, hopefully for your children and mine. Thank you for your effort to keep our lake and our bluffs and our parks open to all who live in Winnetka and to those who visit Winnetka. Our open space belongs to the public. If people come to Winnetka and expect personal attention and making changes that are not for the citizens' existing betterment, they most likely will not be happy. I have heard complaints that we don't accomplish some things quickly. You know what I say? When the decision is made, we will do it correctly. We all have smiled at the old adage, progress without change. Somehow, deep down, we have made thoughtful changes happen for the good of all. And I thank you for serving us for the betterment of Winnetka. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Okay.
So, hello again. Bill Jackson, 771 and 773 Sheridan. So just a couple points. You've been thoughtful, gone through a great deal of research and study in order to get the various points, but I have a issue with, the slope discussion. Just to give you an example, my house wouldn't be built if you hadn't acted it at the time. So the house that I live in today, we built it around a tree, and it had been unoccupied for over 5 years. We had a great architect, I might add. And part of the reason it wasn't occupied is because the tree impeded views of the lake, and if you went up, you wouldn't be able to build a second floor onto the house. So what we did was, obviously, we went around the house and then down a little bit of the bluff, not tremendously, but around the house and over the bluff, if you will. That house was unoccupied and actually became kind of an area where kids hung out. There was I probably could have sold the beer cans and almost paid for the house. So we've put a ton of money into it. I think there's no slope issue, or, we've taken care of it. We put all the, everything about it. The second thing I just want to bring up is we've had a lot of discussions about, everybody else has a slope regulation. That is not true. I don't believe Wilmette has one, and I don't believe Evanston has one. And there's a good reason for that. And it does make a ton of sense that Glencoe and Lake Forest do have one. You've done the studies here specifically, and you know that it's a glacier formation above Tower Road. You know that. That formation actually creates a need, potentially, because of the way the rocks actually sit on the formation in order to ensure because those are semi-unstable. South of Tower is a lake bed formation. It's not unstable. It's completely different. We don't need a slope regulation on a lake bed formation. So I'd really like you to consider those facts, right? Each property is different. Each property has its own characteristics. If you start limiting those characteristics, regardless, you start limiting the opportunity of what the property owner can do, the property rights of it. And then the second thing is we are different than Glencoe. We are different than Lake Forest. And so please don't just be a copycat and think you're going to, cut and paste Glencoe's requirements onto us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else? We may have exhausted the public here. Well, thank you for all that public comment. We appreciate it. At this point in the meeting, we'll go on to reports, and we'll start with trustee reports. Kirk?
No report.
Kim?
No report.
Bridget?
No report.
Rob?
Quick report.
Yeah.
We had the Chamber of Commerce's year-end meeting, and just kind of a little recap, which is really positive for the village as we continue to do all the things we need to do to get the vibrancy back as we want. We've opened up 16 businesses or expanded them, 3 pop-up shops opened this year. The village's vacancy rate dropped from 6.46% to 5.32%, so that's going in the right direction. Tala Coffee is now open. I don't know if you've been there. It seems like the right decision that we made to open up Tala. Ever Eve is opened up. John Plunkett Interiors is opening up on 80 Green Bay Road, which is turning that Indian Hill area into it's been kind of desolate for a long time. Now with the work we've done on the entranceway, Tala, John Plunkett, it's going to be, I think, for the first time, really a much more vibrant area for the township. So that's kind of it's been very good news, and I think the work that the village has done on getting people interested in Winnetka, it's continuing momentum, and it's going to, I think, really pay dividends the next couple of years. That's it.
Terrific. Yeah. Great report, Rob. Thank you. I do not have a report. Village attorney?
No report tonight.
And village manager?
No report this evening.
Report. Okay, we'll go on to item 6 of the agenda, which is the establishment of the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove any items on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is that a
Voice vote.
voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. So we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda, and we'll ask the village clerk to read each item of the agenda.
Thank you. Approval of the village council minutes for November 3rd, 2023 budget review meeting, November 14th, 2023 study session and special meeting, November 21st, 2023 regular meeting, and December 12th, 2023 special meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated December 1st, 2023 through December 14th, 2023 in the amount of $1,745,347.74. Resolution number R106, 2023, approving the purchase of a backhoe loader. Resolution number R107, 2023, approving change order number 3 with A-Lamp Concrete Contractors Incorporated for the 2023 Street Rehabilitation and Public Improvement Project. Resolution number R108, 2023, extending the authorization for the delivery and carryout of cocktails within the village. Resolution number R109, 2023, approving closed session minutes, determining the need to keep minutes of certain closed meetings of the village council confidential, and authorizing the destruction of verbatim recordings of certain closed meetings of the village. Approval of the amended village council meeting schedule for 2024 is also included.
Okay, thank you, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved. Second.
And this is a roll call vote.
Correct. Trustee Alvinson?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Apitoff?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much for that. And we move on to item 8, ordinances and resolutions. Item A, ordinance number MC 12, 2023, amending Title 16 of the Winnetka Village Code and Chapter 17.30 and 17.50 of the Winnetka zoning ordinance regarding a lot consolidation, and this is up for adoption at tonight's meeting. At the December 5th council meeting, a public hearing was held regarding council consideration related to amendments for special use permit approval for multiple lot consolidations. Tonight, council will consider approval of the amendment. Community Development Director David Schoen will review.
I have nothing to add since your last meeting, unless you have questions.
Are there any questions for David? Okay. I'd like to ask for public comment on this agenda item from the audience. If anyone has public comment on this item, please feel free to come forward. Seeing no public comment, we'll move on and bring it back here for the council for comments and discussion. Any comments or discussion on this item? Nothing?
No, nothing
Okay.
additional, no.
That being the case, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number MC 12, 2023?
So moved. Second.
And we'll have a roll call vote.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Apitoff?
Yes.
Trustee Alvinson?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Thank you, David. We move on to item B, ordinance number M17, 2023, granting a variation from the Winnetka zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a pickleball court for an existing residence within the R2 single-family residential district, up for adoption. And earlier today, the applicant has requested that this item be considered in January, and without objection, therefore, this item is deferred until January. Okay, we move on to item C, ordinance number M2023, authorizing the disposition of surplus personal property owned by the Village of Winnetka, and this is being considered for introduction and possible adoption. Each year, the village's operating departments will dispose of material and equipment that have reached the end of their useful lives, are inoperable, or are no longer useful to the village. Council will consider the disposition of the property, and presenting this item tonight is Water and Electric Director Brian Keys to review.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction. As noted in Trustee Dearborn's introduction, the operating departments over the course of the year have material that needs to be disposed of. It's considered personal property of the village. In the case of the Water and Electric Department, this is frequently old water meters, electric meters, failed transformers, and cable. In the case of the police department, it could be items of illegally possessed personal property that comes into their possession, that they need to dispose of. In addition to that, there's specific items in Exhibit A that the departments have identified. In the case of water and electric, it's some saws, and a loader backhoe. You just voted to purchase a new loader backhoe. So when this is received, we'll have the authority to dispose of, through a surplus auction, the existing 2006 loader backhoe. One item to note is the police department updated their TASER equipment. So they are disposing of, with another public safety department, the outdated TASER equipment. So that's specifically listed as well. With your approval of the ordinance, the introduction of the ordinance tonight and subsequent adoption, that would give the village manager or his designee approval to dispose of this equipment that's listed, and also going forward in the 24 calendar year. I'll take any questions.
Questions for Brian?
That's good.
Brian, do you have any idea on this list what the estimated value aggregate, or do we know, Rob, the estimated value of this?
I don't think we have an aggregated value.
Do we put anything in the budget for this type of thing? I can't remember.
Very little in miscellaneous income.
Very little.
Yeah. The TASER equipment, for example, has no value since it's discontinued and obsolete. It's going to be used for parts by another department, if not outright discarded.
Okay.
Bob, are you looking at buying the tasers, or what are you interested in?
Oh, no comment. No comment on that. Okay. Anything else for Brian? Public comment? Anyone in the public would like to comment on the disposition of surplus equipment that the village owns? Okay. Bring it back here. It doesn't look like there's any other comment. Are we all interested in waiving introduction on this? Yeah. Okay. Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M20-2023?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Okay.
Since you're going to waive introduction, we'll make one tweak to Section 2 to make it clear that the disposal is for the 2024 calendar year, since the ordinance is supposed to be adopted in 2024. So we'll make sure that bottom of Section 2 refers to the
2024 calendar year.
Yep.
Okay. And with that adjustment to the ordinance, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M20-2023?
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call vote.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Thank you.
So that passed. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item D, ordinance number MC13-2023, amending the text of the Winnetka zoning ordinance regarding residential uses in the C2 General Retail Commercial Zoning District. This is being considered for introduction. And ordinance number M2123, 808 Oak Street, special uses and variation, also for introduction. And tonight, council will consider a request amending the zoning ordinance to allow a special use permit for a 4-story multifamily building with ground floor parking in the residential uses in the C2 General Retail Commercial Zoning District. And tonight, Assistant Community Development Director Ann Clausen will review this agenda item. Hello, Ann.
Good evening. Thank you, Trustee Dearborn. So as you may recall, August 1st, this application was considered by the Village Council for a text amendment. And at that point, the Village Council decided that the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals should be the two public bodies to consider the text amendment, which is to allow residential uses on the ground floor within 50 feet of the front street line in the C2 General Retail Commercial District. So in essence, the amendment would then allow a purely residential building in the C2. As you may remember, the council was receptive to the text amendment as well as the proposed plan presented by the applicant. And since those public hearings have been held and all three of the advisory bodies have conducted their review of the development, this evening the council is to consider introduction of an ordinance approving the text amendment as well as an ordinance approving the additional relief that are also listed here, the special use permits and the front yard setback variation. Again, it's for a 4-story building, as trustee Dearborn noted, with 3 residential condos on the levels of 2, 3, and 4, with enclosed parking at the ground floor level. And I would point out that the plan presented to you this evening is the same. It's essentially the same as what you saw in August. The property is located on the south side of Oak Street, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, between Chestnut and Linden, or Green Bay Road. The lot is only 33.5 feet in width, so it is very, very narrow. They do have ingress and egress easements, which provide vehicular access to Chestnut Street towards the south side of the property. And because the lot is less than 10,000 square feet, it does not have the ability to go through the plan development review process. They're not required to, nor do they have the opportunity to request that. And as the zoning map represents here, as I noted, it is in the C2, but it is not located within the commercial overlay district. Now, the land use map of the new comprehensive plan designates the site as appropriate for commercial and mixed-use development. As you know, it is in a commercial area with mixed-use buildings. There are offices on first-floor levels with residents above, as well as restaurants and other commercial uses in that immediate vicinity over here right behind us. Now, these are photos of the site, not so current anymore. The photo on the top does show the vehicular access through a private alley. It's also utilized by the 800 and 812 Oak buildings. The applicant's proposed development obviously does not include any commercial space, as I think we've made clear at that ground floor level. At the ground floor would be a residential lobby, the driveway accessing the enclosed parking, as well as obviously the parking spaces on the ground floor. So because it is solely a multifamily building, which the C2 district does not allow, one cannot request a variation for a use that's not permitted. Some have asked previously, well, why don't you just ask for a variation to allow this? You're not allowed to request a variation for a use variation. So hence the applicant here this evening with the requested text amendment. Again, it's important to note that they're requesting that the residential use be allowed as a special use, which, as you can see in the table on the left, residential uses are allowed by right when they are located above the ground floor level, and also 50 feet or more back from the front street line. So the table on the right represents the applicant's requested amendment, which would allow it as a special use in the C2. Again, only C2, not within the overlay. So additionally, the zoning ordinance has development standards for certain special uses. So initially, the applicant requested or suggested two. One, that solely residential buildings in the C2 only be allowed on the south side of Oak on that particular block where the subject site is located. Two, that the width of the lot makes it physically impractical to provide both commercial space at the ground floor level as well as the required parking, or at least a portion of the required parking. So the zoning board was the first advisory body to consider the requested text amendment. That was on November 13th. And during its consideration, one of the board members expressed concern that the amendment was maybe too narrow, only allowing such uses on that particular block. And secondly, that it's too vague, that only referring to that physical impracticality. So after hearing from staff that there appears to be only 3 lots that are no wider than 35 feet, 1 being the subject site, 2 being lots over on Lincoln, the ZBA did vote unanimously to recommend approval of amended text amendment language to allow dwelling units at the ground floor, less than 50 feet from the front street line, in the C2 as a special use on lots that are no wider than 35 feet. And at the meeting, the zoning board meeting, the applicant did agree to the amended language approved by the zoning board. So the Plan Commission then considered that same amended language at its meeting on November 29th, and by a vote of 3-1, recommended approval of that amended text amendment. So shifting gears to the building itself, I think it's pretty difficult to really see it on this slide, but this is representing the proposed site plan. It does contain 6 enclosed parking spaces with the 3 condos above. The parking would be accessed from Oak Street, one way. Then vehicles would exit out the rear of the building utilizing the ingress-egress easements and then the private alley up to Chestnut Street. So again, it's one way. And the entry into the garage would be recessed from that front lot line, approximately 30 feet back. This does minimize the visual impact of the garage door on the front of the building. It also allows vehicles to pull off of the street and sit on site as they allow for the garage door to open rather than sitting on the street or over the public sidewalk waiting for the door to open. And lastly, it would allow for passage of light and air through this portion of a screen wall to the property at 812 Oak. So due to this recessed entry, a variation is required to allow the building to provide a front yard setback greater than 3 feet. So the intent of the maximum front yard setback in the commercial districts is to create a more consistent storefront wall as one walks along the street. However, there may be instances where varying from this requirement may not have a negative impact given the design and the context of the neighborhood and other uses in the immediate vicinity. So I noted the screen wall along the westerly portion of the front. There's also a screen wall proposed along the front, a portion of the front property line that would be located in front of the residential lobby with the ground floor level set back 3 feet from that screen wall to allow for a small landscape bed between the screen wall and the residential lobby. In addition to the parking in the lobby, an elevator and 2 staircases that you can see here on this floor plan would be located on this ground floor. And then at the rear of the building would be trash enclosure that would be accessed from the rear. And because the parking is proposed at the ground floor level and not below grade, the applicant is requesting approval of a special use permit to allow the parking in the proposed location. In regards to parking, the code does require 2 spaces per 3-bedroom unit. So they are required to provide 6, and that is what they are representing here. So they are in compliance with the parking code, parking regulations. Each unit would have 3 bedrooms and measure approximately 3,700 square feet. This is showing you the second floor plan, which would have a green roof terrace along the front elevation, as well as an interior courtyard that you can see here along the west that would also be open to the floors above. This slide represents the proposed floor plans at the 3rd and 4th levels, which are set back 13 feet from the front of the building, just like the 2nd floor below. And at 4 stories and 44 feet, 3.5 inches, the proposed building does comply with the building height. Just going through these elevations quickly, I'll just note the one on the right does represent how the building is set back from the front. And the applicant did provide renderings of the proposed development. They're also included in your agenda packet. I would just note that the exterior wall finish would be a board form concrete. The front has the decorative pre-finished aluminum screen wall consisting of the vertical louvers in a bone white. And the railings on the balconies above would be in the same color and material in that same vertical pattern. These are additional renderings provided by the applicant that are in your packet as well. So in terms of the advisory bodies, the Design Review Board first considered the request on September 21st. The DRB commented that although it's more of a contemporary design, it did find it attractive and compatible with the buildings in the area, with one exception. The board found the vertical slats or screen wall at the street level incompatible with the desire to have a pedestrian-focused building. The item was then continued until the October meeting to allow the applicant time to provide some feedback or response to the board members' comments. So in response to those comments, the applicant did provide some updated renderings, which did reflect the spacing of the vertical slats to be greater than what were originally represented. And the board found that to be helpful in making them understand or better understand how visible it would actually be, even with that proposed screen wall. So ultimately, by a vote of 4-0, they did recommend approval. Then, as I previously noted, the zoning board did recommend approval of the amended text amendment, as well as approval of the 2 special use requests and the front yard setback variation. That was a unanimous vote of 6-0. And then lastly, on November 29th, the Plan Commission recommended approval of that amended text amendment and the special use request by a vote of 3-1. Now, some of the commission members did comment on the design of the building, noting that it wasn't necessarily to their taste, but they fully understood that the design was the purview of the Design Review Board. Additionally, the members noted that the proposed development was providing the housing diversity that the new comprehensive plan recommended. So a lot of them felt that that was a positive in this request. The one member voting no to recommend approval continued to express concern on the compatibility of the design of the building, not only in the immediate area, but the village as a whole. So the vote was 3-1. There were 5 members present. I just want to note that. There was a quorum. The 5th member was the zoning board rep, who is not able to vote on the application because he had voted when the zoning board considered it on November 13th. I would definitely like to note that during the advisory body's review, they received a number of public comments, verbally and in writing. Those in writing were all provided to you in the agenda packet. The public was very concerned with the impact on the 2 neighboring buildings, the safety, pedestrian safety at the driveway, and lastly, the design of the building and its compatibility. Those were the 3 primary concerns that we heard repeatedly. So given the Plan Commission did not unanimously recommend approval on tonight's agenda is the council's consideration of introduction of the 2 ordinances that are listed here. I have nothing further unless you have questions for staff.
Okay. Why don't we start with any questions for Ann? Rob?
I think this is, first of all, I was always trying to figure out who's going to be able to figure that space out. It's been there, how long has this been open? So it's a design marvel to figure that out. So congratulations. I guess I'm looking at the light on, it looks like you kept kind of the center open, so that you kind of wing it, and then there's a center open so you get light into both sides.
Rob, are you asking Paul or are you asking Ann?
Well, I guess I'm asking it as Paul or Ann, whoever can answer that question. It looks like it's winged, and it tucks back in away from the other building.
Yes, the west courtyard to the west.
Yes.
There's no courtyard.
Yeah, otherwise you
On
have
the
you have
east side?
35 feet, yeah. Okay.
Right, right. But yes, on the west side. But I would defer to the applicant. He can explain his design approach to be fair to him. So.
Good. Paul, why don't you?
When you came, you might as well say a few things.
Thank you. Paul Constant, I'm the architect and developer. Yeah, the courtyard really echoes the courtyard, mirrors the courtyard to the west. And it was done to protect the trees that were there and obviously bring more light into the building and make that really work.
Okay.
So,
So it kind of pulls away from the other building too, so
Yes.
light goes both sides. You don't.
That's correct.
Okay. Otherwise,
Yeah.
that's the main one I have.
So relatedly, so Paul, the second floor doesn't, it looks like they don't open onto this courtyard, it's just grass. Those
Well,
are just.
yeah, there'll be access for maintenance only. I mean, it's really visual.
Because
Yeah.
those are all just windows, there's no.
That's
those are-
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just trying to understand
There's
the
some, yeah.
design. That was-
Yeah, there's some windows that open for ventilation, but yeah, it's basically for view.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got terraces to the north and south that are comfortable. Yeah, off the living space.
That's all I got.
No comments or questions?
Either and or? No, nothing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Appreciate the design. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
Richard? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Maybe for Ann, I don't know that we have any members of the public here before we get into public comment, but there was obviously a lot of interest from the public on this. And I guess, Ann, I would ask you, do you feel that the fact that there's no one here right now, that these were addressed primarily for the 812 Oak residents? Or give us a little context of the public comment period on this.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
I
Paul,
think
go
the
ahead.
the most controversial thing really was the fencing or the screen wall in front. And you know, in designing this building, the most difficult challenge to me was the marriage between the building to the east and the building to the west, which are so different. And after playing around with a bunch of different things, I came up with this idea that screen wall was more of a fence between the two, and setting the building back and introducing the green space really made my building not oppose the other two buildings. And so I thought it was a very gracious way to, you know, sort of create that marriage between the two buildings.
And were the residents at 812 Oak, were they convinced of that, do you think, or?
The only, I met with 812 Oak 3 times, and there was a representative from 800. The only opposition, or the only comments that really came up were the concern with the birds that dig into the drive-in on their building, and how that would be affected by my building. We'll be blocking off a good part of that with the tilt-up. And then when I first designed the building, I had the ability to make the building taller if it was 50% less than the main floor. And so I took off that top floor because that was a concern. We had up there an exercise space and some green roof space. Now we have just green roof. So I thought we satisfied the concerns they had. It's interesting, their courtyard is very nice. It really opens to the hallways, and the units on the north and south look into that courtyard a bit, but there wasn't that much concern, I don't think, with what that it would block anything. And the trees would be maintained, and I think generally it was very positive.
And how about the issue of public safety in terms of accessing the parking lot and that type of thing?
Well, I recessed, like Ann said, I recessed the drive-in 30 feet so it'd stay off the sidewalk. You could pull in while the garage door comes up, and so I felt that was, you know, a good solution to the situation.
Yeah. It wouldn't seem that there would, you know, there's, with 3 units, it wouldn't seem to be a high-density use of parking and traffic in and out, I don't, yeah.
No, and I think a lot of the residents will be out of town in the winter too, so.
To me, exiting is usually more of the public safety.
That, well, I think that,
And
yeah.
that's in the alley. so
Out through
that's-
the alley, basically.
Yeah, true.
And there is, you know, I pulled the building back from the south. There's electrical service that is on this property, and then The garbage for 812 is kept on the property, and then there's electrical service that goes into and down the wall of the 800 building, which we stayed away from. So, you know, we try to be respectful. I will say there are 2 light shafts in the 800 building that I tried to work around, and because of fire codes and because of the narrowness of the building, there wasn't much I could do about that. So, you know, they will get light, but I did consider how I could handle and be a little friendlier to that building. But they've got vents that, you know, pour into the property, which are going to have to be relocated, and I said we would work with them to get those relocated. So,
Okay.
so
We're
trying to be good
Whatever
neighbors.
you're going to put there is going to,
It's tight.
it's going to block something. Is that your more respectful way to do it?
Yeah.
I was going to say, really, the design looks like you've accommodated and customized many, many features in the building.
We
Can I just
tried.
ask one general question? Of course, one of the things that kept coming up was the fact that it was a more contemporary design than we see. Just, can you just tell me why you leaned this way?
It is, and I think a lot of it is that there's some simplicity in the design, but I think stepping back from the road and bringing the trees and the landscape in there sort of softens that impact. And so I think it will be comfortable in the, in the setting. But it's really the difference between the 2 buildings that really created sort of that solution. I mean, I looked at a bunch of ways to handle that, and I thought relieving it from the street frontage made the most sense. So,
Thank you.
Well, it's challenging property, and
Yeah.
I think maybe there's consensus here that, you know, you've thought through all the issues, and we
Tried.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, any members of the public like to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on this agenda item. And Ann, thank you very much. We'll ask the council any more comments and discussion before we move on to introduction.
I think it's a nice plan to fill that space. And I think anytime an empty space is filled, people are a little bit disappointed because they've gotten used to the empty
Open
space. I
space.
had it happen next to me when I lived in the city. But something's going to be built there, and we need housing, and I think it's a clever design. The property to the east is, I mean, I don't know if modern is the word, but it's not traditional. And I think that this is a clever design. I like that it's set back. I think that they've done a nice job.
I have a technical question, just for my own education and for anyone watching this, the recording of this meeting. It says, given that the Plan Commission recommendation was not unanimous, the council will consider only the introduction of the ordinance. Can someone explain why that is?
Our practice for a number of years had always been to be introduction and then adoption, regardless of the vote. And approximately 5-6 years ago, it was, there were some projects that came in that were, there was a lot of consensus, there wasn't a lot of controversy, and there was the ask to be able to introduce and adopt on the same meeting. And the compromise that was struck, well, we would do intro and adopt if it was unanimous from the advisory boards. But if it wasn't unanimous, then it would only be for introduction. And that's been the practice for the council.
But 2 of the 3 were unanimous. One was kind of a weird
True,
aberration.
but, so going forward, as the council looks at these things, if you want to give yourselves the option, we could always note it as introduction and adoption to give you that option, but we've been consistent since the council gave us the direction to go in that route.
So it's a practice, not a requirement.
It's not correct. It's a practice.
So there's an introduction tonight.
Correct.
But not an adoption.
Not an adoption.
And we will potentially see that in the future then?
Yes, it would be scheduled for January 9th, and assuming that would probably go on the consent agenda, so that it wouldn't have to go through the presentation again.
And even if it was unanimous, if anyone up here felt it should be removed, not be presented for adoption,
You could take it
it
off.
would not be.
Got it.
And I think personally, in a case like this, where there has been public comment and public interest, it's probably better to do the 2-step process here than the 1-step, and let public comment if they would like further.
Okay. Just out of consideration for the applicant, the 2-step process doesn't add any negative duration to your schedule? If you don't mind responding within the mic.
Most of the architectural drawings are complete. I have held back on the mechanical and the structural and that before I release those contracts, so it's holding that up, but it's the holiday and I don't think it's the end of the world, so. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
I'm
you,
good.
Kirk. Yeah, no,
Thank
that
you.
was good clarification. That being the case,
Going on consent agenda, if that's the case, that would be, applicant doesn't need to come back necessarily, so you can just.
that would be the applicant's choice
Yeah.
whether he wants to come back for that or not. But you never know, it could be removed from the consent agenda too, potentially. So, but in any event, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number MC 13-2023?
So moved.
Second.
And that is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? And may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number M21-2023?
So moved.
Second.
And that's for a voice vote as well. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for coming. Item E, ordinance number M2022-2023, granting a special use permit for the operation of an event planning business within the C2 Commercial Overlay District of the Village at 962 Green Bay Road, and this is potentially to be introduced and/or adopted. Council will consider a request from the applicant seeking approval of a special use permit to allow the existing event planning business office to remain on the property. And once again, Assistant Community Director, Development Director Ann Clausen will review.
Thank you, Trustee Dearborn. So as you just noted, it's before you this evening, an ordinance to grant the special use to allow the event planning business to remain in its current location, which is within the overlay district. The property is one of the first floor commercial spaces located in the two-story commercial building at 962 Green Bay Road. And as the zoning map here indicates, a portion of the property is in the overlay. So a general office is allowed, but by approval of the special use. The space is approximately 638 square feet with 11 linear feet of street frontage. Previously, the space was occupied by a salon for a number of years. This image shows the space along with neighboring businesses to the north. Not identified in this photo is the neighboring business to the south, Material Possessions. This is a floor plan representing how the applicant currently utilizes the space. And as described by her in her written explanation, she is the sole full-time employee and has approximately 7 to 8 part-time employees who generally work from home or at the event site locations. She does have, well, back to the office space first. It is by appointment only, generally 3 to 5 times a week. In terms of the parking, she does have access to one off-street space at the rear of the building, and she has noted that her clients have utilized without any problem the on-street parking as well as the Hubbard Woods parking garage. So on November 29th, the Plan Commission did consider the request. There was one verbal comment in support. No written comments were received. One member did express concern about an applicant coming before them requesting approval and ultimately to the Village Council after taking occupancy, but ultimately they did unanimously recommend approval 5-0. And with that, the ordinance is provided for you on page 173 of the agenda packet. If you wish to waive introduction and adopt it, it's being presented to you as that. I have nothing further unless you have questions.
Any questions for Ann?
No, I guess I look at this and I think it's good that that we look at all these because I'm not, this one is, I'm not as concerned about this one at all, but like with the space with what Valentina went into, which was real estate. I mean, some of those prime, it is so, look at the upgrade that is made to vibrancy of that whole area. I mean, the retail merchandising they do, and it's just fantastic. So I think overall, I mean, I think there are two types of properties, some that are really, really front and center that we really have to be very careful about. This one I'm not as worried about, but it's good that it comes, that we look at this appropriately. That's good, no problem.
And just out of curiosity, and things happen, how did this happen, that the overlay district wasn't, that the issue didn't come up upon the event business going into that space?
I think she can probably answer. I think she started occupying in September of this year, and oftentimes it's a communication issue between a landlord and a potential tenant. We do our best in our department to communicate to new prospective business owners coming into town when a special use is required, as well as communicating those requirements to property owners. This property owner is aware of the special use process, so I can't really answer that question as to why.
No, I think you answered it.
Okay.
I think you answered it. Thank you. Things happen. We'll open this up for public comment. Would you like to comment? Come on up.
I appreciate Ann commenting that the landlord, so I'm Megan Estrada, and I'm the owner of North Shore Events LLC. When I rented this place, I had been actually about a half a block down in 990 Green Bay Road for 8 years on the second floor. So I saw the space. I rented it immediately when I saw it because I had always eyed it, because I think that those spaces are actually, being 11 feet wide, they're actually really difficult to have for retail, and it seemed ideal for an interior designer. I'm an event planner designer to be in that design district. So I wanted to take it, but I thought it was the landlord did not explain that to me. Also, the previous tenant, I believe, had a special use permit to be a hair salon in that district when it's the retail district. So I think they might have thought that it was going to be an easy transfer from a by appointment, salon to a consulting company. So that's just probably the best explanation.
It probably would have been an easy transfer, right?
Yeah, if they had told me in advance.
Yeah, so, but things happen.
What kind of events do you plan?
Social events. So we do weddings mostly, and then other social events. Yeah.
Pick the right town.
You probably know many of my clients.
Could be, I'm sure. Okay. We'll bring it back here. Would people be interested? Will we waiving introduction, going right to adoption? Sounds good? Okay. Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M22-2023?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? And may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M2022-2023?
So moved. Second.
Very good.
Pick one of us.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
No, it does matter.
It
Roll
does.
call vote.
Yeah, I got
Okay,
it.
well, we'll
So,
see who we picked.
Trustee Handler.
Yes.
Trustee Orsic.
Yes.
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
Trustee Albinson.
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes, so that passes. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We appreciate it. We move on to item number 9, old business none. Item 10, business none, appointments. And that was, I believe, in the packet we all received. President Rintz has appointed Scott Myers to a full term on the Board of Fire and Pension and Police
You
Commissioners.
just can't stay away.
Term will expire on December 19th, 2026. Motion to approve that appointment.
So moved.
Second. Bridget and I are tag team here
We're
tonight.
going to have a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that passes. Item B, President Rentz has appointed Christopher Enck as the Landmark Preservation Commission representative to the Plan Commission. His current term on the LPC expires on May 18th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve that appointment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. And item C, President Rintz has appointed Jonathan Alt as the Plan Commission representative to the Plan Development Commission. His current term on the Plan Commission expires on May 18th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve that appointment?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? That would take care of the appointments. Item 12, closed session. We have no closed session. And item 13, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
And no opposed? We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Bob.